The divine constitution of Moorish America. The Grand Sheik and the chairman of Moorish America are empowered to make a law and enforce laws with the assistance of the prophet and the grand body of Moorish America. The assistant Grand Sheik is to assist the Grand Sheik in all affairs if he lives according to love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice, and it is known before the citizens of Moorish America. All meetings are to be opened and closed promptly according to the Circle 7 and love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Friday is our holy day of rest because on Friday, the first man was formed in flesh, and on a Friday, the first man departed out of flesh and ascended into his Father God Allah. For that cause, Friday is the holy day for all Muslims all over the world. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice must be proclaimed and practiced by all citizens of Moorish America. No citizen is to put in danger or accuse falsely his brother or sister on any occasion at all that may harm his brother or sister because Allah is love. All citizens must preserve these holy and divine laws, and all citizens must obey the laws of the government because by being a Moorish American, you are part and parcel of the government and must live the life accordingly. No organization of Moorish America is to cause any confusion or overthrow the laws and constitution of the said government, but obey thereby. With us, all citizens must proclaim their nationality, and we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed, that they may know that they are a part and parcel of this said government, and know that they are not Negroes, colored folk, Black people, or Ethiopians, because these names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time now, and all men now must proclaim their free national name to be recognized by the government in which they live in the nations of the earth. This is the reason why Allah, the great God of the universe, ordained the noble Jew Ali, the prophet, to redeem his people from their sinful ways. The Moorish Americans are the descendants of the ancient Moabites who inhabited northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa. All citizens must promptly attend their meetings and become part and parcel of all uplifting acts of Moorish America. Moorish Americans must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities of Moorish America, and then you are entitled to the name of faithful. Husband, you must support your wife and children. Wife, you must obey your husband and take care of your children and look after the duties of your household. Sons and daughters must obey father and mother and be industrious and become a part of the uplifting of fallen humanity. All Moorish Americans must keep their hearts and minds pure and love their bodies clean with water. This divine covenant is from your holy prophet, Noble Jew Ali, through the guidance of his father God Allah. Islam. To be read in every meeting. I'm glad to know that I have a few faithful Moors among you all, and I desire for them to know the truth and divine truth. There is a host of jealousy about me and the movement now by the same people of our side of the nation that claim it was only a joke and unreal. But now, since they have found out from the government officials and the nations of the earth that this is the only sole foundation that all Asiatics must depend on for their earthly salvation as an American citizen, they are working every scheme that they can to disqualify me so they themselves may take charge of the situation. I have notified all these things to you long ago in the past. It is through the faithful Moors that contribute to the movement and uplifted funds, the ones that pay their divine respect to me and the movement will be remembered. That is why I'm calling upon all faithful Moors to increase their faithfulness to me, your prophet, and your divine Moorish movement. I need finance and I need it bad. Never before have I needed finance as badly as I do at present, that I may shove aside the discord that is facing the nation. It all comes through the jealousy because of my fame and nobility. The nations of the world will not recognize the movement without me, the prophet, being the head. It has been proven by my work in which I have performed in the last few months because I was at the governor's inauguration to represent the Moorish divine and national movement, and I will be at the inauguration of President Hoover for the same. Noble Jew Ali. All right, so I'm gonna continue from basically last meeting dealing with diplomatic relations. last meeting, we covered the space. I'm not sure if you saw, did you see you saw the recording? Universal?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm in.
Okay, cool, cool. So we're just continuing then in that space as far as connecting the dots with Queen Elizabeth, King James, how Jamestown got erected, how our Sultan and Queen Elizabeth were allies and had mutual enemy in King James. King Philip. I'm sorry, King,
Okay.
King Philip of Spain, quote unquote. We also covered the fact that Othello the Moor, the Shakespeare play,
Mm-hmm.
was based on that relationship with our Sultan here in America and Queen Elizabeth. That's where they get that Shakespeare play from. So we
Right.
established all that. All right. So now we're going to transition to the relationship with essentially our Sultan and the Dutch, the
Okay.
Netherlands people, and how that those relationships ultimately gave rise to different colonies. Because ultimately it was 13 colonies before it became the United
Yeah.
States. So we're going,
Yes.
we going colony by colony essentially,
Mhm.
and showing different monarchs that are sultans in America had diplomatic relations with, being that they might have traded natural resources, traded whatever gunpowder, whatever the case may be, and
Right.
based on that, we had an alliance, and based on that alliance, we allowed their subject citizens, um, British, French, Dutch, etc., Irish, to set up colonies on the eastern seaboard of North America, or they call it East Coast. Right,
Mm-hmm.
that's the foundation we laying right now. All right, so I'm gonna continue from a book called Sultan of America
Okay.
by the brother Jamal Bay. So this chapter is dealing with Morocco and the Netherlands, which is the Dutch. Morocco and Netherlands Treaty of Peace and Friendship of 1610. So as we can see, this date is before the most common or most famous Treaty of Peace and Friendship in 1786, dealing with the Moroccan Empire in the United States of America. We see this as 100 years before, more than 100 years before. And then you see it's still titled the Treaty of Peace and Friendship because it was actually a series. And, before anything was called the United States, we had these treaties with the monarchs of European nations, right? So the Morocco and Netherlands Treaty of Peace and Friendship, 1610, hidden as the Indian Wampum Treaty, or the Five Nations of the Haudenosaunee, which is most commonly called the Confederation, the Iroquois Confederation. That's what most people know it as, like the Cherokee, the Seminoles, all the five tribes, right? Which is really codified as the five noble titles: El, Bay, Ali, Al, and Day, right? Which led to the Dutch fur trade with the Lenape in 1624. So when dealing with the Lenape, we're dealing with a clan of Moors in the area of what called now Delaware, Virginia, or the DMV, or what they call it, the DMV now, right? All right. So from the end of the 16th century, the Netherlands have been attempting to establish friendly relations with Islamic countries, such as the Ottoman Empire and Morocco. Now we know that's one and the same. All those were Moors, due to their common enmity with Spain. So not only did England, and under the monarch of Queen Elizabeth, there was enemies with Spain. Now we're finding out the heads of the Netherlands or at odds with Spain. Now these are European. So we got two European nations that are aligning with the Moroccan Empire because they're not feeling with King Philip popping off. Because he's ushering in that Pope system, and we had European infighting when it was starting to formate to what it is today, where all governments pledge to the Pope, etc. That type of hidden hand or secret government behind the government type of deal. It was modern Europeans not feeling that at that time, and they were rocking with us. So this is part of the history and law goes together aspect. We need to know the history of how things went down because it was very complex. And when we teaching our people about this nationality and political status, one of the signifiers of being a national is knowing your history, right? So the nobility is the ones that divided us. I'm not okay. In a sense, but in this context, okay, I see what you're saying. Right. So the hidden hand in this case would be King Philip II. And as we're going to see when we read further, that it was something called the Protestant Movement. Is where you get the Protestant Christians. They were Queen Elizabeth. The Protestants were Protestant, right? They were protesting against how the Pope and King Philip was doing his how he was running the government. So that's really the main reason why, the papal bulls and making people, they calling them infidels and unbelievers because they're not rocking with Saint Mary and the Catholicism. It was other Europeans that wasn't feeling that, so they allied with us to escape and not have to deal with that. All right. Did I answer your question? I kind of know I might have went off on a tangent. I did answer your question, right? Universal B. Okay. All right.
You answered it.
Okay. Islam. All right. So once again, from the end of the 16th century, the Netherlands have been attempting to establish friendly relations with Islamic countries such as the Ottoman Empire and Morocco due to their common enmity with Spain. Some meager attempts took place under Ahmad al-Mansur, which was a sultan until his death in 1603. In April through May of 1605, Pierre Martin Coy returned to Safi in Morocco and Algiers. 135 Muslim captives, both Turkish and Moorish, who had been seized by the Dutch in a naval encounter with Spanish galleys. From 1605, Coy became the representative of the Dutch States General in Marrakesh. From 1608, the new Moroccan Sultan Moulay Zaidan developed a treaty of friendship with the Low Countries and sent several envoys there, such as Samuel Palak and other members of the Palaki family. Hamoud bin Bashir, Muhammad Aguiz, Al-Haji, and Yusuf Bakani. As a result of these exchanges, the Dutch are known to have sent 3 warships requested by Moulay Zaidan. So now we get into the intricacies of the relationship with the Dutch and our people. And keep in mind, when we saying Dutch, it wasn't like, when we're dealing with the higher ups, we're dealing with people that look just like us, highly melanated people. These are not pale Albion modern Europeans. Now their subject citizens were Slavs. Those are the people that were filling up the colonies on the Eastern Seaboard. But their higher ups, when we're talking about King James, King Louis, Queen Elizabeth, we're talking about people that look just like us.
The Stuart.
Yeah, exactly.
And the other ones.
Mhm. All of them. All right, so keep that in mind. So Philip III of Spain used these diplomatic military exchanges as one of the justifications for his expulsion of Moriscos from Spain in 1609. So now there's a lot of stuff going on. So based on the alliance of different European powers, because remember, even though everybody was Moors, some of our people had the ideology of Holy Roman Empire, Christendom, and then we had the more our people that were kept the ancient tradition as being Moors, knowing they Moors, running things like that. Um, so King Philip didn't like how his Christendom partners were aligned with us, the original mind state of people, their cousins. So based on that, King Philip in his jurisdiction had what you call Moriscos. Now Moriscos are the Moors that got expelled, or the Jews that got expelled, and some stayed. And so after 1492, when Al-Andalus, which modernly called Spain, got invaded, a lot of stuff went down, but basically it got shut down. The Alhambra, the Red House got shut down. Queen Elizabeth, Ferdinand, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella merged their kingdoms and ultimately defeated that aspect of where we were at, which was Alhambra, which is loosely called the Red House, was a fort on top of a hill, and that got shut down, right? So 1492, a lot of our people were expelled and got, went to South America, Central America, etc. And the ones that stayed were referred to as Moriscos. So our people that stayed. Now, what a Morisco is someone that they're keeping their culture, but they're not politically active based on colonization. So they're kind of kept in check and they just do their thing in the house or whatever. Um, so I'm just laying the foundation because it's on the record. I just want to make sure people know what a Morisco is. And, it's a lot of different layers to this historical account that we're going through right now. All right, so that's what a Morisco is. So based on that situation with multiple European powers aligned with us, King Philip got scared and was like, "No, the Moors that's in our kingdom right now, we gotta we gotta expel them too, because stuff looking shaky over here." The Sultan of Morocco got alliances with England and the Dutch. Oh yeah, we gotta get these people up out of here. So that's kind of the context, right? All right, so but once again, King Philip of Spain used these diplomatic military exchanges as one of the justifications for his expulsion of the Moriscos from Spain in 1609 to prevent an armed uprising between the oppressed Moors in Spain being supported by the Dutch enforced Moorish military against their Spanish oppressors. Right, so that's what he did not want to happen, is that uprise. So a treaty of friendship and free commerce was signed between the two countries in December 1610, offering free access and friendly reception for the respective subjects with any need for safeguard or safe conduct, no matter how they came to the other's territory. So that was the agreement, the Dutch and our people. In 1613, Al-Hajjuri visited the Dutch Republic, which he could visit freely due to the existence of a treaty of friendship. He stayed from June to September. He discussed with the Dutch prince Maurice. So I want to stop there because the Dutch prince, his name was Maurice, would signify that he was a Moor, even though he was Dutch, which most people would think was some pale, blue-eyed, blonde-haired people. That's a signifier that he was the Moor. So the Dutch Prince of Orange, the possibility of an alliance between the Dutch Republic the Ottoman Empire, Morocco, and the Moriscos against the common enemy in Spain, or King Philip. His book mentions the discussion for a combined offensive on Spain, as well as the religious reasons for the good relations between Islam and the Protestant at this time. So that's why I brought up the Protestant earlier. So the Muslims and the Protestants linked up. They linked up and formed an alliance against the Catholics. So this is the intricacies that we need to know that go hand in hand with the law, because it shows competence that you know not only your ancestors' history, which qualifies you to say who you are in present time. Because anybody saying who they are, they're gonna know their history or their people, right? So now we're saying, oh yeah, the Protestants and the Islamic people linked up against the Catholics. Once you say that, most Christians gonna look at you like, damn, ooh. Like that's cold right there. I never heard that. Right? You get into the intricacies. All right, so their teacher, Luther and Calvin, warned them, the Protestants, against the Pope and the worshipers of idols. So Luther, so think about, or like how Martin Luther King got his name. He got his name from somebody else that was named Martin Luther, who was the creator of this faction of Christianity. So right, these teachers, Luther and Calvin, warned them, Protestants, against the Pope and the worshipers of idols. Right. They also told them not to hate the Muslims because they are the sword of God in the world against idol worshipers. So the Muslims, or the Muslims, were known as the sword of God. So we saying God, we're just saying, as we know, literally, it means to invoke. But in the context of this sentence, when you're talking about the creator of the heavens and the earth, Mother Zodiacus, you're talking about nature's law in order, balance, or which is called Mayat. And that's where you get the people called the Mayans, which is all Moors, right? And then, so we're the sword of natural law, the Moors. So in a human flesh, we're the Bay. That's where they get the Bay from, enforcer of the law. You're talking about all law, nature's law, constitutional law, etc. All law, right? Allah. So now that we know that, look how powerful the sentence is. They also told them not to hate the Muslims because they are the sword of God in the world against the idol worshipers. That is why they side with the Muslim, they being the Protestants, the Christians. So this is in 1600s. The Protestants, who were the key players of the Protestants? Queen Elizabeth, the head of the Dutch, and some of the French monarchs like King Louis were all Protestant Christians that was not rocking with King Philip in Catholic operations, right? So it was the Moroccan Anglo-Saxon alliance. When you hear that, whenever you hear that, that's the summary. So now when we go back to the Shakespeare play, Othello the Moor, and we see this love affair between, well, it's portrayed as a love affair. It wasn't quite like that, but now we see in real time why they were doing business, because it was a common enemy against King Philip. So now once we see that play, we can explain that to somebody now. the basis behind that Shakespeare play, Othello the Moor, right? All right, so now transitioning to Manhattan and how that became Manhattan, right? How that became Manhattan, which is a territory in quote unquote New York. So Manhattan to Manhattan, Native Americans in Lower Manhattan, the Smithsonian National Museum of the American Indians. So this was a quote from that. So now we're dealing with the Lenape, which once again, the Lenape was a clan of Moors. All right, so the Lenape encountered Europeans. Henry Hudson in 1609 sailed to the Manhattan Harbor, Hudson, went back to Europe and spoke to the large number of beaver in what is now the northeastern or northwestern coast of the United States. By the early 1600s, the Lenape were actively trading furs and other items with the Europeans. Now, these furs, there was a lot of beavers in the Lenape Moorish territory, right? So now we got how many Westerns have we seen, or modern Europeans in cabins, and they got the fur hats on their head but in reality, the fur trade was dominated by the Moors. The clan of Moors called Lenape dominated the fur trade, dominated it, right? If you come into America, you want a fur, you going to Lenape Moors. All right. So in the 1600s, the Lenape were actively trading furs and other items with the Europeans. In 1624, as the Dutch settled in what is now Lower Manhattan, the Dutch called their settlement at the southern tip Manhattan, or New Amsterdam, right? So we already know Amsterdam is over there, and the Dutch or the Netherlands. So remember, our negotiation with the Dutch higher ups allowed this settlement of these Albions, and they're calling their settlement New Amsterdam. Then that's a Coke, and Lenape is my father. Okay, that's okay. Yeah, it's divine. So we going into your intricacies. This is your direct lineage, Universal. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah, so New Amsterdam is what the Dutch called this settlement that they got allowed to have based on negotiation with our higher ups and their higher ups, i.e. the Sultan and whatever king or queen of the Netherlands at that time. During the early years of the Dutch settlement in Manhattan, the Lenape helped the Dutch settlers get used to their new environment, and the two groups lived together peacefully. So the Dutch had a new environment. America was a new environment for the modern Europeans. And our people, the Lenape Moors, helped them get acquainted to their new environment. So now that we know that little backdrop, now it makes sense when we discuss things that we can use as res judicata, public record, public acts. And as we know by now, that's connected and has full faith and credit to Article 4, Section 1. Okay. Can everybody still see the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So now it makes sense. Title 29, State Government, General Provisions. Chapter 1, dealing with jurisdiction and sovereignty. And as we can see, this is dealing with Section 106, dealing with the Lenape Indian tribe of Delaware. Of course, we know they're not Indian. but we're dealing with the tribe, nonetheless, that we just talked about. That was dealing with the fur trade. That was showing the Dutch around, getting them acquainted with their new area based on knowing how they got there in the first place was a Moroccan Anglo-Saxon alliance, specific Anglo-Saxon, modern, the Dutch in this case. So now when we read this, we have a whole new backdrop because we've read this before. So when we look at the Lenape Indian tribe of Delaware in section 106 of Title 29, when we go down to subsection 4, we know the tribe was formerly known as the Moors. All right. So once again, we get competent, we become ambassadors, a higher beacon of light when we're talking to people at large in the public, or just putting information together and putting it out, compiling whatever. We want to have a unique perspective and a clearness that we're able to explain this historical account. So now transitioning to the United Kingdom and Moroccan Treaty. So New England colonies under the UK or the United Kingdom, 1620 Treaty. All these treaties before the most famous, so all these treaties, nothing was called the United States yet. Everything we've been talking about was nothing called the United States. But we're laying the foundation on how the colonies that ultimately became 13 colonies got created based on a negotiation with our Sultan and various European monarchs, or our cousins, basically. And based on that, we allowed their Slavs, modern European Albions, to settle in these colonies on the East Coast. We're laying the foundation for how every colony got established. All right, so New England colonies under the UK 1620 Treaty, resulting in the Mayflower. We heard about the Mayflower in school, but not to this capacity. Resulting in the Mayflower. What was the Mayflower? Dutch cargo. The Dutch cargo ship. So when we heard about the Mayflower in school, we didn't know, oh, the Mayflower, they didn't just sail over here. It was, oh, the higher ups of the people that were selling the Mayflower are coming based on the Sultan of Morocco and the king or queen of the Dutch had an alliance, which allowed them to come over here. It was never explained that way. So the Mayflower, a Dutch cargo ship arriving in 1620 with 102 passengers in relation to the Lenape Dutch trade of fur, the fur trade, to bring the freedom to the newly chartered English colonies of New England. So New England, Dutch colony that got erected based on negotiation of our Sultan and the Dutch higher ups, which allowed these modern Europeans to be in a colony called New England. So when we're talking about New England patriots, we know the backstory behind New England now. All right. Transitioning to the Moroccan French Treaty, 1631 and 1635. The Franco-Moroccan Treaty of 1631 was a treaty signed between France and Morocco in 1631. The negotiations were handled by Admiral Isaac de Razilli after numerous discussions and encounters due to the problem of pirates from the harbor of Salé. After being able to enter into negotiations with Salé in 1630, Razilli purchased a quantity of French Slavs from the Moroccans. Razilli visited Morocco again in 1631. So visited Morocco in 1631. So keep in mind, once again, if the Kingdom of Morocco got established in 1956, we're dealing with Morocco in 1631. So let that sink in. And participated to the negotiation for a Franco-Moroccan treaty. The treaty gave France preferential treatment, known as capitulations or peripheral tariffs, the establishment of a consulate, and freedom of religion for French subjects. So this is the stipulations of the alliance. This will be did for their subjects. The treaty was ratified by King Louis VIII, right, the King of France, in 1632. The treaty negotiations resulted in the establishment of the Massachusetts Company, also known as Massachusetts Bay Colony. So now we're dealing with another colony, Massachusetts, on the East Coast. That's how that got established, based on King Louis and our Sultan. Another colony gets erected. Once again, when they talk about the 13 colonies in school, they're not given the whole background of how the colonies got established. So the sultans of Morocco, in contrast to the rulers of the rest of North Africa, do not appear to have remained extended or entertain extended treaty relations with the so-called Christian powers into the 17th century. The treaties concluded prior to that period were mostly treaties of peace or of political alliance with the King of France. 1282. So these type of diplomatic relations were going on since the 1200s. 1282. The King of Aragon in 1274. 1309, 1323, 1357, 1358. So think about what was going on here. So I'm gonna transition to Rhode Island and how that charter got erected for that colony. So Rhode Island Royal Charter, Charles II battle with Morocco. So the Tangier garrison was the land force which oversaw the defense of English Tangier between 1661 and 1684 when it was evacuated. It was part of the English army, the de facto standing army that Charles II established following the what is called Restoration. The restoration of the Stuart monarchy in the kingdoms of England, Scotland, and Ireland took place in 1660 when King Charles II returned from exile in Europe. So King Charles II returned from being exiled from his folks and called his comeback the Restoration. And he established the kingdoms of England, Scotland, Ireland, 1660. The preceding period of the protectorate and the civil wars came to be known as the Interregnum, which was from 1649 to 1666. The term restoration is also used to describe the period of several years after in which a new political settlement was established. It is very often used to cover the whole reign of Charles II. Charles II received Tangier as part of the marriage treaty with Portugal in 1661. The Battle of Tangier, or Battle of Jews Hill. So once again, that battle is also called the Battle of the Jews Hill. Why is it called the Battle of Jews Hill? Because it's a battle between the English and the Moors. And the Moors were also known as the Jews. The Battle of Tangier, or the Battle of Jews Hill, took place on May 4th, 1664, when a force of Moorish warriors ambushed and defeated a detachment of the garrison of English Tangier, led by Governor Andrew Rutherford, the first Earl of Teviot. Now, Earl is just a European title of nobility, who was killed in the fighting. It was the heaviest defeat suffered by the garrison during the English possession of Tangier. On May 4th, he led out a large detachment of troops, a mixture of English and Irish soldiers, towards an area known as Jews Hill or Jews Mount. We know mountain is dealing with mountain, or some, well, in the Bible, when they say mount, they talk about temples. So all of the above is in play. It is generally believed that Teviot intended to gather stocks of stone, timber, and other materials. It has alternately been suggested have been a foraging expedition that Teviot extended to cut down some brushwood that Moorish forces had used as covering during their attacks on Tangier. Once Teviot had crossed Jews River, he encountered around 3,000 Moroccan warriors. The English forces rapidly attacked and drove them off. They pursued the fleeing enemy, but it quickly became apparent that it was a trap, as much larger force was waiting to ambush them. So the Moors ambushed these Englishmen with supreme tactics. The broken terrain was ill-suited for the British to form their battle ranks, and the engagement quickly descended into hand-to-hand fighting, in which the English were overwhelmed by sheer weight of numbers of these Moors. Teviot attempted to rally his men on top of Jews Hill. Notice how they keep saying Jews Hill. Interchangeably, the Moors were referred to as the Jews. Because remember, the Sephardic Jews got expelled. Now, who else got expelled? The Moors, right? From when they called it Spain and Portugal. Moors got expelled. So the Jews and the Moors are the same people. Only around 30 of the 500 who had marched out escaped back to the safety of Tangier. It happened in other attacks by the Moroccans. The corpses of the English killed were mutilated. Following Teviot's death, command developed on his Irish lieutenant governor, John Fitzgerald. Pressure on Tangier weakened due to political developments elsewhere in Morocco, and Fitzgerald agreed to a truce, which by 1666 had become a general peace and resulted in the 17th century New Netherland Dutch Republic near present-day Cape Cod. Dutch West India Company, succeeded by the colony of Rhode Island and Providence plantations. So now we know the backdrop on how Rhode Island, Massachusetts got erected, dealing with the Dutch peoples. And we know it's a Dutch colony. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, those are Dutch colonies. New York, all those things. So this is a piece titled "The Jews in Rhode Island." Interesting. A Brief History by Geraldine Foster. Now this was in 1985. This is entitled "The Jews in Rhode Island." All right. So Newport, the early years, the colony of Rhode Island and plantations, was home for many people whose religious beliefs were unacceptable in other colonies. In 1663, charter gave Rhode Island the freedom to hold forth a lively experiment that a flourishing and civil state stand with a full liberty and religious commitments. No person was to be molested, punished, or called in question for any difference in opinion in matters of religion. It is surprising that the site of the lively experiment was also the site of the second Jewish community to be established in the American colonies. So most people, if we didn't go through this historical account about the Jews Hill and none of that, we would read this 1985 article and look at it like, oh, we're talking about this pale Albion community of Jews. But we know now that we went through the historical account who the Jews were, and the Dutch was going to war with the Moors. And that war was loosely called Jews Hill, the War on Jews Hill. Or technically it's called the War of Tangier or whatnot, but the Moors, that's where the Moors was at in Tangier. So you know what I mean? So it's just, I wanted to go through this just to go through a historical account because we hear these terms like law and history go together, and that determines your political status, your competence, your mental state determines who you are in present time. Because to say you are more, that's as deep. We different from the average people around here, based on the information that we know. And that calls for a great responsibility, So competency, knowing how things went down on a historical account and a law account, is very pivotal. So hopefully hopefully this was eye-opening. Hopefully this shed some light on how these colonies got erected. And that's another thing, like I say, doing these pop-ups lately, dealing with people and how they have questions about how things got to this point. This is a way we can aid them and answer those questions, because it's not like things just magically happen. Like, it's always a science and a factual account. And we just need to be able to know this information, But let me look at the chat. I didn't even see. Let me see. 1108. Okay, you just texted that. Didn't we fight them close to 200 times before the Pelican came to us? Yeah, we fought our cousins. Like our cousins, people look just like us, swarthy people, calling themselves Christians and Romans. Yeah, we've been fighting since like 300s, 400. In the transition, these wars were called the Punic Wars. It was called the Moroccan Greco-Roman Wars. It was just all type of titles. Moroccan Sicilian War. Yep. Fighting ourselves. But then once you get a little closer, they start turning into like papal bulls, orders issued by the Pope to go to war with anything that wasn't down with the Catholic play. And that's where you start getting the Christian Crusades and these different like Knights Templars and these different organizations. And the kicker is, this the kicker. When you read a book, it's a book called Moors and Masonry, where the brother Abdullah, he go into the fact that Spanish Inquisition, that's another one. These are all, like you say, all these wars with different names, but it's the same play. When you read the book Moors and Masonry, you'll see like the motivational factors behind these things. So what I mean by that is like we would have Slavs and captive, but we didn't treat them bad. But for not paying tribute, for not, that's the agreement. You was to pay tribute or, pay rent or whatever. And what would happen is these different head missionaries of the Catholic Church would come and pay a ransom to get these Slavs out of our bondage or whatnot. So later, these people, that's why they pled to the Pope later in the game. So a lot of people don't know that, like the little details of why it was such a grudge. And it was a tactical play by the heads of the Catholic Church to come in and, oh yeah, I'm gonna come and pay a ransom to get these people out. Because they ended up being the foot soldiers later to go against us, our people as Moors. And I just wanted to throw that in there. But that was pretty much what I had today queued up. I'm gonna close out in prayer. I don't know if there are any questions, if there's any questions or not. My family had indentured servants that work for my people. Yeah. Yep. Indentured servants. It was another one. It was mercenary. That's another term. It was people like back in the day, they were called mercenaries. They could have been Catholic, but whoever paid the most, like if our Sultan paid them Catholics the most, they doing what we said. Those are the highest bidder. Pay hitmen, basically. Yep. Okay. Family ancestry. Yeah. But yeah. We'll go ahead and close out in prayer. So Allah, the Father of the universe, the Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector. Allah is my guide, my salvation by night and by day, through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. Amen. Or Islam. Islam, everybody. And once again, Friday and Sunday will be the meetings now. I think, Wednesday be kind of too hectic with the new schedule coming back from LA. So I'll see everybody on Friday. And Islam, peace and love.